gave off Patrick Bateman energy. He's very like serial killer, like nice face, but he might be a little weird. And we were walking around the downtown area, and there are a lot of college campuses, and he was asking me, oh, what colleges go here? Do you know anything about the colleges? And I was like, no, that's weird. And he just asked me too many questions about myself, which is another thing. And we passed this building that I sat at a class in, and he asked what the security was like in my building.
Wow.
And I was like, I immediately went silent. All the red flags, all the alarms went off in my head.
What do you think about modern day dating?
It's very iffy, a lot of pros and cons, and it's changing a lot every day, which is also very concerning.
That is true. Why don't you tell us some of the things, and I agree, by the way, I think it's true that there are pros and cons, just like everything, right? But why don't you tell me what are some of the cons from what you've experienced in your life with dating?
I don't know, like hookup culture is very simple and easy now. Like everyone does it because you have all these people at your disposal at any time on these little apps on your phone.
That's true. So what do you see any red flags usually when you're being contacted for the first time on these apps? What are some of the red flags that pop out to you?
I can never answer this. It's just like, I feel like it's a mental thing for me. I usually just like, I'm very like, I can analyze someone pretty well just from their pictures and like just from what they're wearing and stuff. Sometimes like, and like the filters they use, how they text, like how they type, I will be like, oh, okay, I know what I need to know about you from now.
That's interesting. Unless, of course, what they're writing on there is not true, then you're getting a false perception, right? But in your experience, when most people contact you for the first time, are they asking you to go out for a coffee date or something different?
Something different. Usually that's the majority, especially when it's like people around my age or closer to my age.
Which you're about how old now?
19.
19, okay. So this is very interesting because I definitely am curious to know what the dating life is in your age group, because it's an issue even in people in groups of in the 20s and the 30s, you know, and beyond. So I could imagine how much worse it might be in your age group. Yeah. So do you find yourself like a lot of people are asking you to go to their house or something weird like that, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. For like a first date, right?
Yeah, and I'll be like, I don't know you. Let's go somewhere public.
That's smart. That's smart. It's always good to let somebody know where you're going to be, like a close friend, right? Do you do anything like that to protect yourself in terms of
me and one of my former roommates and then one of our friends, we had like, you know, like a Life 360 or like a location sharing like circle, and that's what we did. So we always knew where each other like was like everywhere in the city.
Good. No, that's good. It's always good to be one step ahead just in case something happens. And of course, you don't have to live in fear, but it's just good to be wise about it, you know? But yeah, so in your experience, a lot of the people that you've met on apps, you do find that they're inviting you to go over their place for the first time, right? Yeah, so I would say that's definitely a red flag. For me, even somebody who keeps trying to convince me to go out for drinks on a first date, who wants to have alcohol involved on a first date, and I imagine if I was a woman and I had a guy who's like, no, let's go get a drink first. Let's get a drink first. Like that would make me question what their motives is. You know, they're trying to get me buzzed and or drunk and then do what? You know what I mean? So like for me, I would prefer something simple on a first date. You know, maybe go for a walk, go for a coffee or tea or summertime ice cream or whatever. You know, something simple. And if they keep coming back at me like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Let's go get drinks. And they keep pushing that agenda, to me, that's a red flag. You know? Yeah. It doesn't happen as much on our side. I think it happens more on your side, where men are consistently pushing that idea for a first date to women. Would you say that's kind of true? Either that or going over to their house.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Ghosting. I feel like that is a huge, huge issue these days, and it has been for a while. Have you had any bad experiences with that before?
Yeah, like one of my first kind of like relationships, it was purely on the phone. Like I never met this boy, but it was like 2020. We had FaceTimed and like texted for months, and then I went to spring break, and he was like, you know, barely talking to me when I was on break, but I didn't notice because I was on vacation. And then I come back and radio silence, and would call him tons of times, no response to text. And then like...
And you guys didn't even have a fallout or anything, right?
No,
just out of the blue.
He just stopped talking to me. And then I think I had him only like on Snapchat. It was the only like social media I really had him on. And like he would still look at my story, which made me so mad. Like when he looked at like my like stories online, I'd be like, so you're not going to respond to my messages, but you're going to stare at my pictures.
You're gonna stalk me, but you're not gonna say anything.
Basically.
Yeah.
And then like I took him off, and then months later my friend was like, you should just talk to him again. And then I did. He texted me first, like, oh, hey, how's everything going? Which was really weird to me, because I was like, why are you going to text? He texted me first after ghosting me, which was weird.
Yeah, yeah. Have you had any questionable experiences with somebody you did meet up with that, where they raised some red flags?
Yes. A guy named Brad, very red flag name, of course. We
Never heard that one before.
Yeah. So like I even made a joke about it to him that his name was Brad, but we were like texting whatever, and just like minutes before, like he was texting me the entire time, like, oh, I put my dog's away, I might be late, and it was just like, oh, he's gonna ghost me, he's not gonna come, and then he did. And he gave off Patrick Bateman energy. He's very like serial killer, like nice face, but he might be a little weird. And we were walking around the downtown area, and there are a lot of college campuses, and he was asking me, oh, what colleges go here? Do you know anything about the colleges? And I was like, no, that's weird. And he just asked me too many questions about myself, which is another thing. And we passed this building that I sat at a class in, and he asked what the security was like in my building.
Wow.
And I was like, I immediately went silent. All the red flags, all the alarms went off in my head. And I was like, yeah, we have like security guards and everything, and it's pretty secure. And then the entire time I was just like trying to walk far away from him, was just like, I need to cut this short.
Like, I understand that there was some context, right, where you were talking about an incident that happened and stuff like that, and he might be like,
saying, I had a class in this building. Oh, what's the security like?
That's like the first thing he asked. Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, I'd say that's very questionable to some extent.
Yeah.
But nothing happened, thankfully, right?
Yeah, I was like, for the next like week of class, I was like, is this guy gonna just walk in here and do something? But nothing happened.
Did he talk at all about himself, or was it just all trying to find out about you and nothing?
He just asked a buttload of questions, and he only talked about like his dogs, maybe what movies he liked, and that was it.
A lot of depth there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. But back to the ghosting thing, I feel like that's a very common thing these days, and it has been for a while. And it's like you could be talking to someone for a while or a short bit, things seem to be very promising, and all of a sudden just radio silence, like you said, right?
Yeah.
Just gone. I've even had an experience once where I actually was dating someone for like 3 months, and or somewhere around that time. It was blossoming. It was great. We were both crazy about each other, and you can usually tell if someone's really just kind of whatever. Like the chemistry was there, the intelligence, everything that we wanted in a partner was just there, and then out of the blue, gone. Which is really odd, because usually you'll get that with someone you first meet, but it's already been months that we were, so it's like that was even more heartbreaking, if you want to call it that, because it's like you've already invested, a quarter of a year just about, and things were so promising, and you're hoping it's going somewhere, and then all of a sudden, no fight, no argument, no nothing, they're just gone. And my immediate thought was, because we talked every day, we never missed a day. Even when we were busy, we'd be like, hey, I'm having a busy day, I'll catch you later,
Okay.
It was just, we were just like that. We were just like checking in with each other, it wasn't a control thing or anything. We were cool like that, And then all of a sudden, one day I didn't hear from her. And then 2 days went by, and I'm like, hey, just check in, make sure you're okay. I thought maybe, because she was a single mom, I thought maybe something happened. She was in a car accident, in a coma somewhere, or maybe something happened with somebody else, And so I was genuinely concerned, So I was like, hey, just let me know everything's cool. If you're busy, that's all good, Nothing. 7 years later.
7 years?
7 years later.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. She reached out on Facebook, and she said, hey, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, blah, blah, blah. I just want to say I am so sorry for what I did. Someone just did that to me, and I see how bad it hurts, and it made me think about, wow, I did that to Ruben back in the day. And so I wanted to just say, I'm not begging you back or anything. I just want to say I'm sorry. And I thought that was big of her to do that, especially after almost a decade. And I responded, and I said, hey, wow, hello, surprised. She came out of nowhere. And I said, I appreciate that. Thank you. I hope all is well. And I hope you'll never do that to any human being ever again, But she just explained that she had gotten back with the child's father, and she didn't want to hurt my feelings, and she didn't know how to process that and just be honest about it. But I'm like, dude, what you did was way worse. You should have just said, hey, I got to get back with the ex, because the kid and, we just kind of have, we have this history together.
Yeah.
I would have totally understood. It would have sucked, but I would be like, hey, I'm happy for you. If that's what you really want, that's all good, But no, she decided to ghost me, and I was just like, wow, that's crazy. But she's the only person, I think, that's ever reached back out, especially so late, so much later, and say, hey, I'm sorry. So that was big of her, but I think it obviously happened because it happened to her.
Yeah.
But it was still big of her to reach out and put in the effort and say, hey, I'm sorry, by the way.
That's cool, because most people, like, when you get ghosted, you have no closure. They just disappear.
Exactly. But here's the funny kicker. So then we started talking again like friends, and there was no more interest there for me, at least, to pursue anything. And I was clear about that. And she's like, yeah, me too. She's like, I'm not really looking for anything anymore. And I'm like, no, it's all good. And then she did it again.
Oh my.
I kid you not. No arguments, no disagreements, just out of the blue, just vanished again. She did mention right before she vanished, she's like, oh, you don't want to be with me anyway. I'm like, I'm mental or something. And I'm like, oh, okay. She seemed very normal back then. And, we talked every day. We even had conversation. I remember we had this one phone conversation once for 9 hours, which I don't ever want to chat with anyone that long on the phone for 9 hours. I'd rather do that in person. But like, that's how great our chemistry was, that we can keep rolling off each other, and then the sun came up and I'm like, we should probably go to sleep, But, so yeah, but I've had plenty of instances where I went on a date. You felt a genuine connection. You could tell when someone doesn't really, they're putting on a show usually, right? If you can read people well, like I can, and it sounds like you can too. And then all of a sudden, like you said, they're just gone.
Yeah.
And like, hey, I think part of the problem is that people are going on so many dates, or they have so many connections, they just start getting complacent or lazy. And you're like, I just don't have to offer anybody an explanation because I just met him yesterday. But you're still, you're not being mindful of the other person.
Yeah.
It's so easy to be mindful of our own ways, right? And our own things in our own time. But the reality is, if we want to be a person of integrity, which to me is very important, you should be mindful of someone else's time, even if you've never met them. Yeah. Unless they were like, really disrespectful and, huge red flags across the board, and like you're just trying to escape, right?
Yeah.
Fine. If you want to block them out of the blue and not explain anything, okay, fine. But to somebody who's just a normal person who, you guys had a good connection with, I say just say, hey, I'm sorry, but it's not there.
Yeah.
And then that person should be mature enough to understand and not be butthurt and say, okay, sucks, but I get it. I wish you the best.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, I've had situations where, I went on a date and the chemistry wasn't there, and most people would just kind of leave it at that, and then they just don't answer anymore, or they just don't message you, right? It's kind of assumed, right? It's kind of assumed that the connection wasn't there. I like to go home and then send a follow-up text and just say, or whatever, a message, and say, hey, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming out tonight. It was nice to meet you. You're really nice, but I have to be honest with you, it's just not really there for me, and nothing you did wrong, but just, I wanted to say thank you for your time. And some people were like, oh, thanks. Wow, you're the only person to ever do that. I appreciate that. But I've had quite a few people say, wow, you're such an ass. And I'm just like, what? I'm like, how am I a jerk for, being mindful, respectful, and polite, But some people are just not used to that. I'm like, I guess you'd rather be ghosted, but, So would you say you've had a lot of experiences like that where you've been ghosted?
Not really. Usually after dates, it's kind of like assumed we're just like, oh, maybe we didn't like each other. Or like, just gradually just stop talking to each other.
Yeah.
But of course I had some people be like, oh, hey, you're interested in meeting up again? And I just have to be like, yeah, sorry, no, just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever had it where someone, they ghosted you and then maybe they resurfaced after, 6 months or a year, and there's like, hey, how you doing? Like really simple questions like that. Just like, dude, where'd you go for like half a year? And all of a sudden you're like, hey.
Not
nothing.
really. I've had some people who like I've just maybe like talked to like just for a little bit. We never actually even met, and then like they'll stop talking to me and be interested in me, and then they'll see I post something and they'll like resurface, and I'll be like, okay, I see what it is.
Yeah, yeah. So when you moved to Chicago, were you utilizing these apps to like try to meet people and get to know people since you didn't know anybody?
Yeah, because I was just like, oh, okay, like first time in the city, like I'm an adult now, meet people, that'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I only did it because I think my roommate had one, and I was just like, why not? So that's why I did it. She didn't even use her dating app like ever.
Yeah, yeah. And so you have recently, in the past year, met someone, finally,
Yes.
right? I assume it's still going good.
Yes.
And this is the first person since you've moved here, right, that you've kind of seen this long, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Tell me a little bit about that, how you guys met.
So we met on an app. It was like this like weird, like a lot of like middle schoolers, it was like ages like 14 to like 28 like use it. And it's like an app where you can live stream and, you know, meet people and message people and whatever. And we like, you know, matched, and he just like said, hey, what's up? And I like give my Snapchat. We barely talked on there, and like that was it. And then I think on Halloween, I was like, oh, hey, I'm going to this party. Da, da, da. We were like messaging about it right before, as I was on the way to the party. And he said he was also going to a party. And
that's funny.
yeah. And like I got there, da, 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 I was early. And then as soon as I was texting him about to ask, like, oh, what party are you at? He walks in, and I recognized his costume because he was posting pictures about it. And I ducked behind my friends, and I was just like, that's him. I was just texting him.
But what are the odds of all the parties going on in the city that you guys are at the same one? Was it a school party?
No, I found out about it on Instagram.
Interesting.
And it was super funny because he was wearing a mask. So it's kind of like a masquerade thing.
Right.
So I saw him, and like he walked into like the kitchen area, and I like chased him, and I was like, take off your mask right now. And he was so confused, but then he recognized me.
How did you know it was him if he had the mask on? Was it because he told you on the app?
Just because like, he was posting about pictures of himself, and he was sending me pictures. So I was like, oh, that's him, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's so great. You know, you don't hear those stories all the time, especially the way you guys bumped into each other like that. Like, what are the odds, you know?
And it was super funny because the party was terrible, honestly. Like, my friends, they left, and I was like, I'm just going to sit here. I literally stayed there by myself because I was like, I just want to see where it goes. And I sat on this couch, and he came up to me, we started talking, and then after that, we started hanging out, like, all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like social media has also changed the dating game, like Facebook, Instagram, in any way? How would you say?
It's kind of like, in a weird way, a catalog. You can just like see people you like and message them at any time. And I've gotten too many weird DMs from just people who, it's like weird, like who just have like access to you at any time.
Mm-hmm. Is there a way to block that, or is that just automatic?
Of course, make your account private, and like block people and like restrict messages. But like, of course, like you could still like see them. Like sometimes people just like message you even if they don't know anything about you. Mm-hmm. It's super off-putting.
Do you feel like you are more turned off by dating apps or people contacting you through social media?
Social media, just because like at least on dating apps, like you know what you're there for, but on apps it's just unsolicited person just messaging you out of nowhere. Yeah.
Do you feel like the pandemic affected dating for you to some extent?
Honestly, I feel like not really. Just because, like, I was like...
Were you still meeting people even during the pandemic?
Well, I was like 16 during the pandemic, so like I wasn't dating anyone really. Yeah. Like other than the ghosting, like that was it. I was like still like high school, like hadn't even kissed anyone yet. Like, so it wasn't a big deal for me.
So you were back home at that time, obviously. Yeah. Gotcha. Well, that's good because you probably didn't have to experience some of the differences in the dating world, you know, which a lot of adults did. A lot of people weren't willing to meet up anymore. And so like it was all online or all through apps or video chatting, right? Yeah. You know, conferencing in on a video chat and whatnot. So my next question is, do you have any rules about dating? Like, for example, I heard somebody online say once, one of my rules is I don't meet this type of person at all, or I won't meet somebody for the first date on a weekend because if, I thought this was interesting, it made sense, because if it's a really awkward date and it just blows, I just blew my weekend or that weekend day, you know, whether it was Friday night or Saturday night. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a good point. So they would start on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, you know, for that first date only. And if it's good, you know, follow up on the weekend or something.
I don't really have any rules. Usually it's like to meet in public places, like usually during the day. Like most of my dates have been like, oh, let's go on a walk. Let's like go to this like coffee shop, this like bubble tea restaurant. Let's go see a movie maybe. Just like something stupid. Like I don't like meeting up at night usually. Yeah,
that's smart. That's good. You know, here's the thing. If you decide to meet with somebody and do something simple, right? It's not even about what you guys are doing as much as, you know, the level of connection or the quality of time together, right? So like you can go on a coffee date or on a walk and have a great time and get to know each other well. Yeah. as opposed to going into a noisy bar. And this is not to say that you can't, have a quality date in a bar. But like what I'm trying to say is you don't have to have alcohol. You don't have to be in a bar scene to get to know someone. If anything, I would argue that it's better to be away from the distraction of alcohol in a loud place where you guys can just be just you.
Exactly.
You two get to know each other and talk about basic things about life and really get a feel for that person. In general, when you start talking to somebody, whether it's on an app or in person, is there any particular things that trigger red flags for you? If they say something or do something that makes you kind of be a little bit more careful from the start?
Usually, I don't know. It's just like sometimes the language they use. Like, I hate people, like sometimes guys make like the worst jokes and I'll be like, you shouldn't say that. Or guys just like say things and like don't realize I'm like, oh, you maybe shouldn't say that. Or they just have weird opinions and they'll say it thinking everyone else has that same opinion. And it's like, no, that's weird.
Yeah, exactly. Do you feel like if you could go back in time, 50s, 60s, whatever, just further back, that you would fit better in the dating atmosphere then, where things were more traditional, where you could approach somebody or be approached in person in a polite way, as opposed to having to utilize modern day apps? Or do you kind of like the idea of being in the modern age and just finding a way to navigate through that?
I honestly like the apps just because it's made it easy for me to meet people, because in person, I don't talk to anyone. Like if you're in a class with me, at a store, or anywhere in public, I'm dead silent.
Yeah.
But like being on apps, like I can like actually be like, oh, hey, I know like I can talk to you now because you're on this app.
Yeah, I agree. And I have mixed feelings about it myself. I kind of like the idea of the traditional way of meeting somebody, like if I try to approach somebody now to try to get to know them, they might get freaked out, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's this guy's intentions? Why is this stranger coming up to me? I don't know that it was really like that back then, because back then that was probably the only natural way to meet somebody, is to actually talk to them in person, right? So people weren't, on guard. Whereas now everyone's so used to dating apps and stuff like that like if a random dude just comes up to you at the train station, you're like, okay, what is this guy up to? Why is he talking to me? I don't know him, So people have their guard up, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of wish people were more approachable these days. I do think that part of the reason is just society in general, but also apps that make people guarded like that, because we've grown accustomed to meeting in a digital platform as opposed to in person. So now meeting in person is just kind of awkward,
I have had experiences where have just like come to me and be like, oh, hey, you're pretty, da da da. And I love it. It's great. But like, I'm just very shy sometimes. So it's easier for me to like meet people online rather than in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this. Based on your experiences, and you have a younger sister, so, you're probably worried about her too, as she's going to start dating at some point. She's about, what, 14, 15?
15, yeah.
Okay, so, it's a very curious age. I mean, I feel like people, even when they're 11 and 12, they start wondering about love and other things they shouldn't be wondering about, So it's like, but do you feel, based on your experience, you would give a certain type of advice to her or to anybody else based on what you've learned?
I feel like it's just be careful always, and like don't like just meet someone just because you're attracted to them. I feel like you should like actually build connections with people and like go slow, because some people like nowadays just like they don't want a relationship. They'll just like jump in and meet someone without knowing anything about them.
That's true. That's good advice. Well, hey, listen, it's good to have you on the show. Thank you for coming and sharing some of your input.